She knocked on his door at midnight, soft at first, then with a trembling urgency that slipped through the quiet, suburban street like a plea carried on the wind. Inside the small house in Asheville, North Carolina, Aaron felt the sound pulse straight into his chest. Something in the rhythm of it, fragile, uneven, told him it wasn't just a visitor. It was someone breaking. When he pulled the door open, the porch light caught the streaks of tears running down Claire's face, her eyes swollen from hours of holding in a pain too heavy for one heart. In that moment, everything felt suspended. The night, the silence, the space between them. And before she even spoke, Aaron knew the world he thought was steady was about to tilt. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Claire stood at the door in the same gray sweater she always wore on difficult days, the one she claimed felt like a shield. But tonight, nothing about her looked protected. Her lips quivered as though she wanted to form an explanation, but all she managed was a whisper so faint it barely carried across the doorway, a whisper that said more through its ache than any long confession could. It wasn't the words that mattered. It was the way she stood there, holding the pieces of herself in both hands, as if asking whether he still saw her the way he once did. And Aaron, despite all the distance that had grown between them these past few months, felt an old ache stir inside him, the memory of what it meant to care even when it hurt. Inside, the house was dimly lit, the soft glow from the living room lamp stretching across the hardwood floor. When Claire stepped in, she moved slowly, like someone afraid that the ground might give way beneath her. Aaron noticed the slight tremor in her breathing, the way she clutched her arms around herself as if trying to keep from unraveling. He watched her take in the familiar space, a space that had once been filled with laughter, shared meals, and late-night talks that stretched until dawn. But time had a way of pulling people apart when they weren't paying attention, and somewhere in the quiet drift of seasons they had lost their rhythm. She walked toward the small couch, the same one where they'd shared coffee on Sunday mornings, and argued over small, forgettable things. Now, she sank into it with a heaviness that seemed to come from the very core of her. Aaron could see that the storm she carried wasn't sudden. It had been building, gathering weight day after day. He sat in a chair nearby, giving her space yet staying close enough to let her know he was here. For a moment neither spoke. The silence felt like a fragile glass wall, transparent, delicate, and at risk of shattering with the smallest touch. Claire's whisper returned, soft and uneven, as she began unraveling the truth she'd been holding back. She told him about the pressure at work, the impossible expectations, the loneliness she'd felt walking through each day pretending she was fine when inside she was drowning. She spoke of the mistakes she'd made in fear and confusion, the decision to pull away from him, the cold distance she'd created because she didn't want him to see her breaking. But the more she tried to hide her pain, the heavier it became, until she found herself standing on his porch, unable to carry it anymore. As she talked, Aaron felt something shift inside him. Not anger, not resentment, but a deep, aching empathy. He remembered how strong she had always tried to be, how she hated burdening others. He realized she wasn't here to mend what was broken between them with promises or apologies. She was here because she had finally allowed herself to be vulnerable, and that vulnerability was the most honest thing she had given him in a long time. The wind outside pressed gently against the windows, and the house seemed to breathe. With them, Aaron leaned forward, elbows on his knees, listening to every word without interrupting. The more Claire spoke, the more the tightness in her shoulders softened, like the act of telling her truth was lifting a weight she'd carried far too long. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but also a flicker of hope, a hope that maybe she wasn't alone after all. He didn't rush to reassure her or offer solutions. Instead, he let her finish her unraveling, let her breathe in the quiet that followed. Then something in him softened further, and though he still carried his own wounds from their distance, he felt a deep compassion rise in his chest. In that warm, dim living room, beneath the weight of the midnight hour, Aaron realized that sometimes healing doesn't come from fixing everything. Sometimes it comes from simply choosing to sit with someone in their pain. Minutes stretched into something softer. Claire looked around again, and he saw her expression shift, not to happiness but to a fragile relief, like she had finally reached a harbor after months of drifting. She whispered again, this time barely audible yet full of meaning. He understood. She wasn't asking for anything, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not answers. She was asking whether she could rest for just a moment, whether her heart, heavy and bruised, still had a place where it wasn't judged or dismissed. Aaron nodded with a gentleness he hadn't felt in a long time. In that small gesture, something unspoken passed between them, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful form of love isn't romantic or perfect. Sometimes it's simply being there when someone has nowhere else left to go. The night outside stretched quietly, the way nights do when two people find a moment of truth between them. Claire leaned back, breathing slowly, the storm inside her finally easing. Though their future was uncertain, though so much remained unsaid, the moment felt sacred. It felt like a beginning, not necessarily of them again, but of her healing and of him choosing compassion over bitterness. When she looked up at him through tired, tear-worn eyes, he offered a small, steady smile, not a promise, but a presence. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more people receive stories that remind them they're not alone. Before the ending, please comment below. Everyone deserves a place to feel safe. In the quiet glow of that midnight hour, as Claire finally closed her eyes for a moment of peace, Aaron realized that some doors are knocked on not for entry but for mercy. And some whispers, soft, trembling, full of truth, say more than any words could ever hold.